into the Unity game engine. So this is pretty exciting. This is the first time we will actually be able to interact with our models in a real-time environment. And to do this, it doesn't take too much knowledge of any advanced techniques such as coding or programming or anything like that. We're going to get started by downloading Unity for free. Now you will find these Unity versions on the lab computer, so you can go and use the SFAT labs. But to get Unity, Unity is a free program.com and download the personal edition. And the personal edition, again, is free to download. There are some stipulations to that, but overall it will work. And it will work to make a quick interactive experience. So unity3d.com/get-unity is a great place to start. Now, what I have today is I have a few models that I've went ahead and downloaded online. And we're going to import these models into Unity and create an interactive experience. So to get started, let's go ahead and let's open up our Unity, and we're going to start by creating a new file. And so we're going to go to the new file, and we're going to put it. It's going to go on my desktop. So let me create a new folder real quick and call it Unity Game. And let's set that folder to the proper Unity game folder. So it's just like in Maya how we set our file. We are going to create a 3D game. If you wanted to create a 2D game, you could do that as well. There are asset packages that we will download in a bit, but we'll get to that. So we'll just do that later. We're going to hit Create Project. It's going to load the basic scripts for Unity. And one of the first things you're going to know when Unity opens up, or you're going to notice, is it has a very similar interface to Autodesk Maya. For instance, if I hold my Alt key down, I can actually move around in my viewport just as if I were in Maya, and all the controls are relatively the same. This is going to be a very great tool in putting our models into place. Now, before we get started importing our models, let's go ahead and create a few things in Unity that we need to work. You'll notice Unity comes with a default camera, and it comes with a default light. These are all linked to specific codes, so I suggest you don't delete those unless you know what you're doing or you're a more advanced user. So let's start by creating assets, and let's create a game object, and let's do a 3D plane. And this 3D plane is going to be our floor, and you'll notice it has a similar move GUI to Maya. If I hit R, just like in Maya, I get the scale key. And so let's go ahead and do a few of these 3D planes. So I'm going to do 3D object plane again, and I'm going to rotate this plane. And the reason I want to rotate this plane here is I want to rotate it 90 degrees in X, so I'll type it over there. There it is. Oops. Hit W. I basically want to create a room, and this is going to be really important for my scene. So now that I have that, if I hit Command D, you'll notice it duplicates just like Maya. And so now I can rotate that in Y. And we need to remember that Unity has different up axes, so we'll be aware of that when we rotate it in Y. It did it this way. And now we have two walls that are relatively meshed well together, so we'll just kind of try to get those as good and as close as possible. All right, so now that we have that, we can kind of move our sun out of the way to start working. We could go ahead and texture these. I'm going to hold off on that. Notice that I tried to keep them perfectly square. I do have some rectangles, so I may want to scale those up slightly. But let's go ahead and get our game built assets in there. At the bottom, you're going to notice there's an asset folder. And the way I like to do it, there's multiple ways to do this, but I like to right click and import my object. You can also do a right click and import different packages that Unity comes with. We'll talk about that in a second. But let's go ahead and let's go ahead and add an import asset, and let's grab our barrel. We'll keep that straightforward right away. And we're going to add a barrel here, and there's the barrel. Now the barrel comes with a default material that was on it in Maya, which is important to know. And I'll go back to assets and simply drag my barrel onto the scene. And now that my barrel's in here, I have a few things to look forward to. I want to make sure the scale of my barrel, even though it's set to 1, is the proper scale to the scene. As of now, I know it's okay, but if your barrel was too big when it came into the scene, this is the time to do it. I'm going to go ahead and also import a few more assets, and let's import the textures and the diffuse map or the color map, and we will also import the normal map, so we have both of those. I'm going to highlight my barrel, and I'm going to go to the barrel shader. Notice I have to click it twice to actually select the shader mode. Cast shadows are on, so that light up here is affecting where the shadows are, which is kind of neat. And the barrel, I'm going to go to its shader, and I have a few options here. So at this point, I need to apply a color map, and you'll notice the word color is missing from the selections that we have. Normal map is there, so that's something we'll approach later. But for the color map, it's actually under albedo. And so if I drag that into albedo, there we go, you'll notice my color map is applied. Not really that interesting yet because obviously I need a good normal in there. And when I put my normal on, it's going to recognize it, and it's actually going to say, this texture is not marked as a normal map, would you like to do so? And I'm going to hit fix. Now, depending on what your barrel is, you may want to make sure, if it doesn't show up right, that you either use a positive or a negative value. I like this normal map in the negative value because it gives it a little more ridges. So you can see the model comes in quite cleanly. Let's add some more models. So let's import a new asset, and let's import just a simple box, make it an FBX this time. And that crate is way too big, so our scale factor is 1. Let's make that 0.5 for the mesh. And that means anytime I bring it in, it will actually be half the size. So that's good to do down here in your asset editor. So every time if you want to duplicate this box, we can do that. I have a wood plank shader. This came with 2 materials, you can see. So that's something to keep in mind. And for the 2 materials I have here, I just open their drop downs. I will go and import their materials. Import new asset, wood plank. Let it load, give it a few seconds. And we would do the same process. Wood plank shader goes there. The new asset of the normal map. We'll go into the normal map function once we get it to load. My computer's just lagging a little bit today. There we go. Normal map, fix it now for me. You'll see immediately. It's going to take a few seconds, but we're going to get a nice, pretty decent looking normal map come in. There it is. That looks really good. The other shader is actually dealing with the edges. So I'm going to just simply use my eyedropper tool and sample a color, maybe a darker color, darker pixel, and that gives me a nice result. So this is a pretty cool result so far. You'll notice our objects are sitting on our floor, they're casting shadows. I could texture these ground planes the same exact way. They come with default shaders. That's great to have the ability to do that. So it's something we want to kind of play around with. Now I suggest that you import your ground plane and your walls from Maya, because this way they can already be worked out. Now, one of the cool things we can do is if I hit the play button, what this will actually do is let me see this in real time. Now, I can't move yet because one of the things that it's not letting me do is move around in my scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually import a controller. And to do this, I'm going to right-click in my Assets window, Import Package, Characters. And that's going to take a couple seconds, and you need to do this each time you import. And just go ahead and assume everything is correct. And it's going to import a big old folder of stuff for you. So give it a few seconds. And we wait, and it's loading all these different things. There's third-person controllers. You can actually have a visible character walk around your scene, all sorts of stuff. We're going to just use one option. So we're getting there, almost there. There we go. So what that's going to do is create this folder with standard assets. And we want to go to the characters folder. Then we want to go to the first person controller. And at this point, we're going to go to prefabs, and we're going to go ahead and drag the FPS or first person controller into the scene. And it looks like a little pill. It's actually kind of neat. And once I have this pill in the scene, when I hit play, something cool happens. I actually become that character. And if I use my A, W, D, and S keys, and spacebar will jump, I can actually walk around these objects. Now, one thing you want to avoid is obviously going over the ledge. Let's see what happens. If that happens, your game kind of breaks. So there it goes. So I'm going to kind of hit pause there and unplay, hit play again. Kind of restarts me. One of the things, though, we do notice is we're kind of going through the different shapes, and that's not really giving me the result of a realistic game that I'd like. So I'm going ahead and using my WASD controls on my keyboard and my mouse to look around. You can even kind of see the walls and the ground and all that fun stuff. And I'm going to go and unplay it. Let's go ahead and make these collider objects. So let's go back to our asset folder, and let's go to the barrels. And in the barrels, we're going to go ahead and say generate colliders. And I'm going to hit apply. And we'll do the same thing with the box. We'll select the box, generate colliders, and apply. What this does is exactly how it sounds. It's going to actually make it not able to walk through. So now, we can kind of jump. We can actually jump on them. I missed, but you guys get the idea. So you can collide with them, which is a really cool kind of neat method to kind of work around. Now, if we're really happy with what we have, the next thing we can do is make this an actual playable game, because right now, if we simply save the scene, it's not going to come in as a playable file. So what we want to do is build this setting, or build this game file out. So if I do build settings, you'll see we have a lot of options. One of the options is if we want to do a target platform. So we can do this for PC, Mac, Linux. We can do this for iOS. We can Xbox 360, PlayStation 4, all sorts of stuff. And those are very, very important. And we can also add multiple scenes to build. We're only dealing with one scene. So if we just go to build and run, and we add open scenes, which is the one we are currently using, so we'll call this game, and we hit build and run, finished, make it not all caps, game, and we'll save this out into our desktop, and we'll put a folder called finished, just to be safe. We'll save that there. We're going to make sure we make it target to Mac OS, and what this is going to do is import all of our files and actually create a playable video game, which is really, really interesting and nice when you're trying to create an experience for your user and obviously all that fun stuff. Now, that's the bare bones basic. We can do so much more in Unity. Here it's going to ask us how we want it to look. I want it to look fantastic. And it's going to say, do you want to play it? I absolutely do. It's going to open up the game. And there we are. Look at that. W, A, D goes left, or right, pardon me. Spacebar jumps. Spacebar and W. Now I'm on my box. Look at that. We just made a real-time game. I'll go ahead and hit the escape key here to kind of close out my game. So that's kind of neat. And we have our little game. So pretty awesome stuff, and pretty neat ways to kind of interact with your game. And you can see, if I can get to it, I can quit that project up at the top there. So let's look at what that did. In the finished folder, I now have a finished game, and that finished game is absolutely a playable application. So kind of neat, kind of a neat way to kind of explore and create that real-time experience. So let's close this out real quick. Awesome. All right, so it's 45 megabytes, kind of heavy, not too bad. I could compress this if I was going to turn it in and put it on another computer. That may make it smaller. Let's hit Command-I and see. It goes down to 20, so that's a pretty big upload for web courses, but it will work. And now you have all your fun stuff. You know, in that Unity project too, you have your assets, you have all sorts of fun things. I do suggest not moving around these files. These possibly could be linked. So when you do export it, again, preferably put it in the file with all your different like project settings and things like that in it. Otherwise, it may not work. So let's see some other stuff. So I'm going to delete that file, and we're going to do that again. But let's put some other lights and things in. So if we kind of look around, especially with our main camera, we'll notice that even that first-person controller has some awesome stuff. But we have like things like the sky color, which we can kind of start changing, you know, have some fun with that. We have something called the Skybox, which is really neat. You can kind of play with that more, and we'll learn a little bit more about these when we get into the class setting, because they're more fun to kind of play with one another rather than on their own. So we can create things like lights, directional lights, point lights. I can add a point light in here, and you can see it kind of glows the sides of the building. I can change the intensity, the bounce of the light, turn on hard or soft shadows to get more shadows, play with the different settings of the shadows, the shadow strength, and so forth. It's a really nice kind of user-friendly tool, and that's what's so important about this when you guys are using this. It has very similar windows to what you're typically using for other programs, for instance, like Autodesk Maya or Photoshop or whatnot. You know, we have a lot of different windows that we can play with, like animations. We can play with the project. We can play with our project settings, for instance. We can play with the graphics and the quality and all that fun stuff. So I, encourage you guys to explore this kind of tool, and we'll learn a little bit more about in class. We'll learn a little bit more about changing, obviously our background colors. You can see it's now changing. Changing our skyboxes, kind of figuring out what's going on there, just playing with depth, turning off everything, so you guys can get kind of a cool experience when you create your game. So again, if we do a build and run, and we have our open scene in it, our Mac OS, and we hit build and run, I'm going to go ahead and this time make sure it goes into that Unity project. And now I can zip that file up, and that's going to be a heck of a lot easier. We'll make this a little smaller, and we'll make it fast for the quality. And we have a successful build. And that is how you make a game in Unity. Hope you guys enjoy that. You would just simply compress this file, give it a few kind of minutes here. There we go. You'll see this is a bigger one because I included everything, but you're guaranteed to have every file that you need to get this game working. So hopefully you enjoyed this lesson, and I look forward to playing your games.